Hello and welcome. My name's David, and today we have a very special guest by the name of Kelly Robertson. Kelly is a psychic and a healer who reached out to me through YouTube, one of my videos, and actually did a personal tarot card reading for me, which resonated really highly with me. It was pretty much spot on. So today we're going to be talking to Kelly about what her mission is here on Earth, why she's here, why she does what she does, and also the different things that she can do for you. And yeah, welcome Kelly to the show.
Hi, glad to be here.
Glad to have you. So Kelly, why don't we get started with what it is your mission is here on Earth and why now?
Okay, well, my mission on Earth was to come for the Great Awakening. And why now is because now it's really hitting us.
Hmm.
I've known since I was a really, really small child that I volunteered to come back here. I didn't, of course, know what that meant for a very long time. I would tell my parents, I would tell my brothers and sisters. When I was old enough to start going to school, I used to go outside and stare at the sky and try to figure out how I could go back home because I didn't want to do school again.
Right.
And they were like, my parents were like, "Why don't you want to do this school again?" I'm like, "Because they teach it all wrong." I
Yeah,
didn't want to do it again.
sure.
So they just thought I was a silly little eccentric kid until I started. Um, we would like take a vacation, and the night before we went on vacation, I would tell my mom and dad what we were going to see and what it was going to look like and who was going to be there and, different stuff like that. And they were like, "How do you know that?" I'm like, "I don't know. I just went there in my dreams last night. I didn't
Hmm.
understand it." And along the way, I started trying to learn and figure out who I am and why I'm here because I felt so different. And I knew that I came here for a purpose. I knew that it was something that would happen in my late 40s. I knew that people were going to call it the Great Awakening. There were going to be slogan phrases that I was to watch out for, like the Great Awakening and
Right.
we are who we've been waiting for, and the world as we know it is about to change. All of those are like famous basically now. I mean, everybody uses them synonymously.
Yeah.
And I'm 48, almost 49 years old, and ta-da, here we are. Um, I knew that I had to learn a lot of things, like to how to hone the skills that I have. Everyone called me gifted, and it
Hmm.
really rubbed me the wrong way because I'm not any different than anybody else. Like we all have these same abilities, these same tools. I just happen to be one of the people that came here knowing how to use some of them. And I
Right.
didn't always know how to use them. I had to learn that. And on my journey of seeking these things out, I ran across people like Dolores Cannon, who had been hypnotizing people, and she's calling these people star seeds and star children and indigo children and stuff. And I'm like, wait a minute, that's what I am. That's exactly what I am. And so I started learning more and trying to find these people, right? But I mean, like nowhere that I went did I actually find those people that knew from childhood that they came here on a mission. Now, my family is all what you would call gifted as well. I mean, they all have an innate natural ability to use those tools that we are all given. And as I was telling you earlier, I think my main point that I want to get across to everyone is that Jesus's words were so literal when he said, "I am no more the Son of God than you are, and you can go forth and do these same great works that I do." When he sent his 12 disciples out into 12 different directions. And even his disciples, learning from him how to do these things, they had healed people and done miraculous things. They thought that if they didn't have him with them, that they couldn't do them. And he's telling them, yes, you can. And personally, that message alone is why Jesus was killed on the cross. That one alone. Because if we really all embraced that, can you imagine how powerful we could be and beautiful? I
Yeah.
mean, we would really be beautiful we would be the way we're meant to be. And that's the point of the Great Awakening, is for people to wake up to that, and people like me who understand how to use those tools to step forth and to show people how they can use them. So that's why now, because it's the Great Awakening, and I'm prepared. I've prepared for 48 years, literally. I mean, literally, right? So I'm ready to step out now. And actually, you asking me on your channel was divine intervention, right? Because I was just somebody who saw in you, I'm an empath, I'm very, very intuitive. So I just simply saw that when you were speaking with Janine, that you really desired a personal reading for some reason. Tarot's not even really my forte, it's just something I dabble with. But I just felt compelled to reach out to you because I felt like you really needed some kind of clarity. And here I
Yeah.
am on your show. So, I mean, that's just God. That's the way God works
Yeah.
beautifully.
Oh, I want to thank you for reaching out, and it was really a blessing. And
You're
it gave
welcome.
me a lot of clarity, and there's definitely a few things I need to work on, and we can talk more about that, a little bit later behind the scenes, for me
Yes.
personally. But in terms of you coming to Earth and knowing from such a young age, was that something that you just knew, you know, ever since you could remember? Like, you know what I mean?
Oh
Like
yeah.
you just
Oh
had a
yeah.
knowing.
I just knew. Yeah. I knew that I came here for something that would be called the Great Awakening. I mean, I was saying that term when I was 2 and 3.
Right.
Literally. I promise. I have 6 brothers and sisters. You could ask them all. They thought I was crazy for a
Sure.
long time. They just thought I was a big joke. But they actually all take it very seriously now. And you know, there's so many things, even within the Bible, that's prophetic that's now unfolding. I mean, it's undeniable proof that the Great Awakening is here. You know, it's not just political like a lot of people think. And granted, I've gotten into politics in the last 6 years harder than I've ever cared to. But there's a reason we need to be involved in politics now. We need to really. I think we all kind of took the easy chair and just let government run over us. Unfortunately, I mean, I'm even guilty of it. I didn't want that. I wanted to study spirituality and bring peace and love and harmony to my community. I wasn't worried about politics, but it's a big deal. It's a big part of it. We have to hone it into and get good people in there that have good intentions for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. I was never somebody who really cared about politics either. I didn't know necessarily the amount of control that it had, or with both parties, or just around
Right.
countries around the world. But it's definitely something that I've paid a lot more attention to in the last year. And
Yeah.
and yeah, you're right. I think everybody needs to pay attention to politics on some
Yeah.
level.
I think, sorry to interrupt you. I think Q did a great job in enlightening a lot of people about that too, the importance of it.
Mm.
The whole QAnon thing. I think I know you're not supposed to.
Yeah, don't say that. Don't
Sorry.
say that word.
Oops.
There's a few words we can't
Just
say. We can't
flip
say
me or
the
something.
B word. We can't say
Right. I
the
mean,
C
I
word.
knew that. I
And
wasn't thinking.
yeah, that's okay. That's
Oh
okay.
my
Maybe I
God.
can edit that part out. But
Yeah, you might need to.
mm, so so knowing what you knew from such a young age, what kind of things did you how did you know where to start, like building these skill sets?
Okay, well, I said earlier I have 6 siblings, but 5 of them were pretty much grown, and it was just me and my brother. He's 3.5 years older than me, and he's always sort of had his own ease of access to our tools in our toolbox, right? So um, he believed what I would tell him, and he would say, "Okay, let's work on it." So we would like put our energy together and focus on the power line that goes between the shed and the house, and start making it ripple and jump rope. Just from focusing on it. One time we created a vortex in the cornfield that scared the dickens out of me, and he wanted to go and jump inside of it to see what it would do. But like we would just test, like the movie Men Who Stare at Sheep or Goats or whatever it is with Clooney. George Clooney's in it. It's kind of about the FBI or the CIA's secret programs for practicing the psychic abilities, and they're laying on a hillside trying to move clouds and do stuff with clouds. Well, me and my brother used to do that. We used to practice moving clouds.
Okay.
And
Like telekinetic or telepathically.
yeah. Like telekinetically make the cloud move. And we've done things like trying to part the storm to keep the storm from being terrible in our area. We've done lots of things to experiment with what the mind can do. The mind is a very powerful thing that we really cannot wrap our mind around how powerful thought is. It's crazy fast. It's faster than the speed of light. And I've been saying that since I was 12, and they're just now finally proving it. Like it really is. Those old sayings, those old folk tales, be careful what you wish for, things like that. Those really had weight that we discount now and we take for granted. But they really did have a lot of weight. There was a reason that those older people were trying to pass those things down to us. But we had a cat that died. My brother and I brought the cat back to life by putting our energy into it.
How long between the death and how long had it died for until you brought it?
Minutes.
Just a few minutes, yeah.
Minutes, yeah. As I became an adult and had children of my own, I was kind of giving my first 5 kids a crash course in doing these kind of things. We started out with practicing with a deck of cards. I would have them, focus on the deck of cards and pick one of them with just your mind and hold it in your mind. And I'm going to find the card and show you which one it was. So we would do that. And then we would take turns and I would do it and they would pick the card so that I could show them, that they can exercise their mind and they can do these things too.
Wow.
And we would do fun things like I would be on the way home from the grocery store. And as I'm in the car driving, I would be thinking to my daughter, preheat the oven to 425. I bought a frozen pizza. Silly things like that, and she would hear me and she would have the oven on and I would walk in the door with the groceries and she was like, you told me to preheat the oven, didn't you? And I'm like, yes, I did. Very good. Because we don't really need cell phones and things like that. We don't really. All of these things that man has created are things that we can actually do, right? We create a camera. That's what our eyes do. You know what I'm saying? We create headphones. They do the same thing our ears do, yada, yada. Cell phones are simply connecting us in a way that we think is limited. And as long as we think limited, we are.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for
sure. A lot of people do think that technologically we've hit this peak where we could never ascend, or transcend that, which is clearly not true. I mean, you look at different alien races or things that have supposedly landed on Earth, and clearly they're light years ahead of where we are technologically.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and that's another thing. Alien abduction also runs in my family quite strongly.
And that's something that you've experienced?
Oh, my whole life, yeah.
So
yeah, I've probably seen more craft that I reported to MUFON than they'd ever heard of one person seeing in their life. They actually wrote an article about me because of it.
Okay.
Because I've seen so many different types of crafts.
And I'm dying to know the answer to this question. Are alien craft, could be one or both of these things. Are they interstellar from other planets and other star systems, or are they perhaps interdimensional?
I think they're both. I think that there's some, like I don't have all the answers, right? But I think that some are just in another dimension. And that sometimes we see them and sometimes we don't. And that's why they look like they vanish all of a sudden. And the other ones I think are interstellar, and they're the ones that we actually see go straight up and then disappear, right? But some of them literally just will blip out right in front of your eyes. or maybe you can't see them yourself. This has happened to me. You don't see them with your own eyes, but you're taking pictures, right? You're going around taking pictures outside. And then you go home and you put your pictures on the computer and you're like, wait a minute, I didn't see that UFO when I was there, but it's in the picture, kind of the
Yeah.
same way ghosts are, right? Maybe you don't see the ghost, but the ghost will show up in your photograph because that's a dimensional thing, right?
Yeah. Do you have any photos that you can share with me later on?
I do, but not at this moment. If I would have thought about it, I'd have got them ready. But I
Oh,
do
but
have,
later, another time.
yeah, I have
Okay.
lots of pictures.
Yeah, I'd love to see them.
Yeah,
That's always fascinated me, the UFO phenomenon. And I, my grandfather, he had a book. I've got it just here actually, and he gave it to my mum. And ever since then, I've just been, yeah, going crazy about it. Done
you
a lot of
froze up.
research and.
You froze. There we go.
Okay, so we were talking about aliens and stuff,
Right,
and then we got cut off.
right.
Uh, Yeah, so interstellar or interdimensional, you said they could be both, and I think it's quite possible that is the case. Obviously,
Yeah,
we only see such a narrow part of the electromagnetic spectrum that there's so much out there we can't see. So there could be an alien right there, like
right. Actually, sometimes I walk past certain people down the street or in buildings or whatever, and I just pick up this energy off of them that's really different. And I'll say to whoever I'm with, I think they might be an alien because their
yeah,
energy signature is different than ours.
right. But you mentioned earlier that you wanted to go back home. So
Oh
where's
yeah,
home?
well, I've always felt connected to the Pleiades, the Seven Sisters. Seven's a big thing for me. I'm the seventh born. I wear a size seven and everything from a ring to my shoes. Um, I was born 7'7", 7 pounds even. I mean, sevens of just, I have a birthmark of a
That's
seven.
crazy.
Sevens are a big deal to me, right? And that may have been for a reason, so that I would know something about my connection, my origins or whatever. Um, the name Atlas is a very big deal to me. I'm not sure why. It feels fatherly. I can't guarantee what that means, but Atlas has always been a big name for me. Um, when I was about 8 or 9 years old, I was visited I used to live across the street from the city park where we grew up. And I was there alone coming into the park. And there was this beautiful 18, 19-year-old girl standing at the shelter house. And she had a cast on her leg and she had crutches, blue jean shorts that were cut off, and she was just so beautiful. She was captivating. So I just kept staring at her as I walked closer to her. And she smiled really beautifully and she said, "Hi, come and talk to me." And normally I didn't talk to strangers, but I came and sat down and spoke with her. And I mean, she was like the epitome of beautiful from her head to her toes. Her body was perfect. She was muscular. She wasn't too thin. She wasn't too thick. Her hair was blonde and beautiful. She had the biggest blue eyes I'd ever seen in my life. I mean, she was just perfect in every sense, right? And I go and sat down with her and I'm like, "I haven't seen you around here before. Where are you from?" And she kind of in a giggly, almost a melody type giggle, she says, "Oh, I'm from far away from here." And I'm like, "Okay, well, my name is Kelly. What's your name?" And she says her name is Alanis. And I'm like, "Okay, well, how come you don't have any signatures on your cast on your leg? We typically will sign somebody's cast, it's like a gesture of getting well." And she's like, "Oh, I didn't know about that." Well, that was weird to me because I'd traveled all over the United States with my parents and seemed like everywhere we went, everybody knew that, so that was a really strange thing to me. But she kind of looked over my shoulder like she was staring at someone. And I turned and looked at her direction where she was looking. And there was this very tall albino man coming toward us with two shorter people. maybe entities on each side of him. I still cannot recall what they actually look like because he was so out of place to me. And um, he was dressed in like a Men in Black type suit, you know, and he walked up to the shelter house, and I was very frightened. And I said to her, I think I hear my mom calling, I better go home. And she said, it's okay, he can't hurt you while I'm here. And I just thought, okay, girl, you've got a cast on your leg, you can't protect me, I'm out of here. So I just booked it. And that was a very weird thing. Well, I forgot to mention, as I turned to say goodbye to her and that it was nice to meet her and I hope to see her again someday, the man and the two people or whatever they were that came with him had completely vanished, completely. And this city that I grew up in was all flat land. You could see for miles, you know, and he was nowhere. And so that scared me even worse. Well, then if that wasn't strange enough, I get home and my whole family, whole neighborhood had been looking for me for 3 hours. They had been all over that park. They had been everywhere. And they're like, where were you? Where were you? And I'm like, I was right there at the shelter house with that girl named Alanis. And they're like, no, you weren't. Where were you at? And I'm like, no, I really was. But they didn't see me there. Like, I can't explain that. I don't know if they put us in some different dimension or if they zapped me away somewhere and I just still thought I was in the shelter house. I don't really know what happened. I just
Hmm.
know that that happened. That was my experience, and my parents and neighbors thought that I was gone for 3 hours. I was
Wow.
missing. Yeah. So that was, I've had lots of very interesting things happen to me in my life that most people don't have happen ever.
Yeah, I
Very
think
interesting.
it's. I read a book by one of my favorite singers, and he was writing about ghosts and stuff, and he's experienced paranormal his entire life, and I think it's very
For
much
sure.
whether you do or you don't. There's kind of no in between.
Right, right. If you've seen one ghost, you're probably likely going to see another because if you can see them, they know and they want to interact with people that can see them. So, they pick up on that energy signature. And so,
Mm.
if you've seen one, you're going to see more. If you're around a ghost, you're gonna, because they're trying to draw into you, actually 2 or 3 years ago, I don't know how much time we still have, but 2 or 3 years ago, when I first moved to this house, um, I started having an interaction with a ghost that I didn't know when they were alive. But when I was telling my roommate about this ghost and what they look like and what they were saying, it was actually her deceased husband that I never had met. And so, and he had a message for her. And so that was pretty intense. I've had a lot of intense messages with ghosts because they're needing to communicate with people. They want to communicate with their loved ones and give that final message or that I'm okay. Don't stop worrying about me, right? Don't worry about me so much anymore. I'm okay. So they really do, like, your soul never dies, right? I think most of us understand that now. Even if you believe in a heaven and a hell kind of a thing, your soul never dies, right? I personally believe in reincarnation. And I
Me
have
too.
stories to tell to prove that too. One of my daughters is actually my dead father. And I didn't tell her, she told me when she was 2. She
Wow.
came she came running up and jumped on my lap and put her little hands on my face and just beaming. And she said, I used to sit on you used to sit on my lap just like this when I was your father. And she threw her arms around me and just hugged me real big. And I'm just like, kind of freaked me out, had to take it all in. But my dad was a great uh, strength for me because he understood the gifts. And so he helped me. He really participated in helping me to hone them. And when he died, I was 17, and he said, "Listen, if my calculations are correct, I'm going to be with you again in about 10 years. And I'm like, okay, old man, I don't want your crazy Zen talk right now. This is not the time. And he's like, no, Kelly, I mean it. Well, when my daughter came and told me that she used to be my father, I actually sat down and started doing the math. And she was born 9 years and 9 months after he had died.
Mm.
So he was actually right. I don't know if he meant 10 years was his calculation because 10 years is when I would be able to handle it mentally, or what, but he figured 10 years and he was back in 10 years.
Yeah, because my understanding of what happens when somebody passes is their soul goes up there and they kind of learn about their life that they previously had, what they did well, what they could have done better, or what they, things like that. And then
Right.
there's a period of time, and obviously time's different between our realm and up there, but
Yes.
there's a period of time, however long that is, where they figure out what do they want to achieve in the next life and where would they like to reincarnate,
Right.
and they pick the
That's
best
actually
they pick the best body to allow them to do that, to carry out that mission or whatever, or their multiple missions.
right. Right. And if you choose to keep coming back into the same family, you can, to be close to that family. And there's soul family too. There's people that you'll meet on the street and you'll just know the first time you meet them, this has got to be part of my soul tribe because we just vibe so good, right? And even if you never see them again, but you had that one conversation, it'll stick with you your whole life because they were part of your soul family. And
Yeah.
you were talking about when your soul leaves and you sort of do your checks and balances. Uh, we are actually our own judge, right? We're those scales that are talked about, um, and as proof of that, you're going to be far greater of a critic of yourself than you would be of any person in the world. You're going to be forgiving of them. You're going to be understanding of them. You're going to be compassionate to them. You're going to love them. But what do we do to ourselves? We criticize ourselves. We are very, very hard on ourselves. And so when you die and you have that near death experience where your whole life is flashing before your eyes, you're actually doing those scales already at that moment. Did I do enough? Did I do too much this way? You're weighing those checks and balances. And I think that's where the zodiac comes into play because within each um, zodiac sign, you come with your gifts to service to others and lessons to learn for service to self, right? Because we have to learn how to love ourselves too, in a non-ego kind of way, right? We have to, it's got to be real love, genuine love that we would give to someone else. And that's a very hard lesson for a lot of people, is how to
I
love
agree.
themselves. And that's why shadow work is so important, because you have to go inward and be honest with yourself. Okay, this is my weaknesses, this is my strengths, and I need to own and embrace my strengths, and I need to work on improving my weaknesses. So shadow work is a very important thing in order to evolve
Yeah,
as a
yeah, definitely. Shadow work is something I need to do more of, and I've probably done. You mentioned in my reading that I'd done quite a bit of the work already, and
yeah.
and I don't necessarily. And obviously, I was doing it consciously, but I also think I was kind of doing it unconsciously, if that makes sense, because I didn't know what I
Yes,
was
we
doing.
do. We do. Yeah, with
Yeah,
a foot in both worlds. Yeah.
yeah. I know that I did a lot of work, but I didn't know what the outcome was going to be. I didn't necessarily know that I
Right.
would arrive at this point in time now, having the experiences that I've had. But I'm
Right.
glad that I did what I did. But because I didn't know what I was doing, I kind of need some guidance now to kind of go further.
Right. And see, that's the thing, David. We all need to keep in mind that even myself, I'm a teacher at this point, but I'm always also the student. We always have room for more inner work, more shadow work, more improving, more involving. evolving. I mean, there's no limit to how far you can grow, and we're all human, and we're in this 3D world where the emotions are very imbalanced still until a little later. But so at this moment we all falter, right? We all fall back on old ways or old patterns, old habits. you know I kind of joke and tell people I keep my foot on that bitch. But I keep my foot on her and keep her quiet, because old Kelly would have maybe done something drastically different than new and improved Kelly, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Mm. So I think that would be a good place to wrap it up here. But before we go, I'd like to just to get your opinion or your um, vision on what you see coming down the pipeline in the next 6 to 12 months.
I think there's going to be a lot of truths unveiled in the next year. For all of this year, it's going to be a lot of truth on personal levels, and
External.
nationwide, globally. It's all unfolding. See, last year, Corona actually means crown. Okay, if you were to change the word Corona into English, it really means crown. And there are a lot of blessings for us to take from being parked at home and having to look at each other more, right? Because we
Absolutely.
had disconnected. We had disconnected really, really extreme until Corona happened. And then we were forced to stay at home, and we were forced to communicate. You know, we were forced to look at life differently and find different ways to have joy and whatever. And so it was a blessing in disguise. Granted, the virus thing was blah. I don't even want to talk about it, but not good. It was not fun for anybody, right?
Mm.
But it was a blessing. If we can look in hindsight and take blessings and lessons from things, that's the best thing to do. And so last year was about reflecting and preparing. This year is about peeling back the layers and discovering and learning truths. And then next year, we're going to be picking up pieces, but they're going to be there's going to be a lot of joy in it. 2022 is going to be really great, in my opinion. It's going to be a fantastic year for everyone. Really, I think about July, of this year, we're going to start feeling better vibes. But definitely by next year, we're gonna really be taking off in a new direction.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Not necessarily knowing what's going on, but just what I can surmise is that yes, last year was a massive, big, painful year, and this year we're going to come to the tail end of that, and as a
Right.
result of all the pain, there's a lot of growth that happens as well. And then whilst we do pick up the
Growth and healing.
pieces, then we can
Yes.
start rebuilding. And yeah,
Yes.
2022 and beyond, I would imagine, are going to be transformative years in many ways.
Yes. I think it will be. And I think it's going to be very, very healthy kind of growth. It's going to be like a breath of fresh air compared to what we've been going through.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I would agree. So what I'll do is I'll leave a link down below to check out Kelly's channel. It's Earth Song. I'll leave a link down below. But before we end it completely, what are some of the things that you're offering that you can do for people or help them on their journey in with the Great Awakening and with just in life itself?
Okay. Well, I want to teach the importance of the spiritual connection and how to do that. And it's really, there's a lot of people that say I can't meditate, I can't this, I can't that, but it's really so much simpler than all of that. You don't really have to go through so much work. I personally don't even meditate very much anymore. I learned it, I was very diligent about it, but it's really like all of these things that you could use. For instance, people who do spells would use a wand or a pendulum or whatever. And I use dowsing rods and different things like that, but they're tools. right? They're tools that do something for us until we learn how to do them ourselves. And then the tool is no longer so necessary, you see, because the answers are within you. That's how the tool is working. It's working through you, spirit speaking through your body as the actual vessel. And that tool's just showing you your answers, so that other people can see it too. And so I do still use dowsing rods and stuff. And a lot of times, if I don't have time to sit and think about something, if I've lost my keys, I can get my dowsing rods and they'll lead me right to them. I mean, they're great, great tools to use sometimes. But I want to teach people spirituality and the importance of it. I want to teach them how to use all of their tools in their toolbox. How to use telepathy and manifest happiness into their life by the power of thought, and keep those storms from hitting their house and the tornado taking it away. And you know what I mean? Like I want to empower people and encourage them to use what God gave all of us.
Yeah. Okay. That's a great message. Absolutely.
And actually, I had a quick little story I wanted to tell you if we have maybe 5
sure.
minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. So you were asking me earlier, how did I learn to use all the stuff that I do and whatever? And I told you that my brother and I brought a cat back to life. Well, I started teaching my kids, and we had chickens at one time. And we had just bought like 40 baby chickens, and we brought them outside and let them get some sunshine. Well, we ran to the store, and while we were going to the store, a summer storm popped up, and it flipped the little chickens box over to where they couldn't get back out of it. It flipped back down to where they were like inside the box again, and the rain actually drowned 38 of those baby chickens.
Oh wow.
And so when we got home from the store, we rushed, my daughter and I, she was I think 12 or 13 at the time. We rushed out to get the chickens while the other kids took the groceries in, and we took all the baby chickens into our shop, and we got a blow dryer, and she's blow drying their feathers. And I said, okay, now you're going to do exactly what I've taught you to do before. She was very good at healing plants and bringing plants back to life, or giving them the nurturing energy they needed to not completely die. So she was the one I used for this. I said, okay, now you're going to help Mom, and we're going to give these little baby chickens our energy and bring them back to life. And she didn't even doubt me or second guess me. She just said, okay. And she just started putting her hands above the little baby chickens. She laid down her hair dryer, she was trying to blow their feathers with. And she's just laying her hands, because your energy comes from the palms of your hands for healing. So she's laying her hands across the baby chickens, and I'm laying my hands across the baby chickens, and we're floating our hands around, and we're just focusing our energy. And all of these little baby chickens came back to life. All 38 of them. We didn't lose a one. Okay.
That's crazy.
And we thought it was crazy too. I'm very scientific. I like to apply what I'm learning in a scientific method to make sure that it's real, to make sure it's not hoo-ha, right? So we would do things like that. Well, then 38 chickens came back to life. A couple of months after that, my oldest daughter and my mother were in a car wreck. And this car wreck was so devastating to my daughter. And I guess I take that back. The one that helped me with the chickens couldn't have been 12, because the oldest one was 11 when this car wreck happened. She was broken inside. My daughter was, everything on the right side of her body was broken. Her organs were bleeding internally. She had broke her femur. The seatbelt broke and threw her into the back. And it broke her femur in half when the seatbelt broke and she was thrown. So she was bleeding internally in her leg. Her pelvis was shattered. The whole side of her face was broke. Her eye was hanging out. It was disgusting. It was awful. And she had flatlined. She was dead, right? She was dead. They brought her back good enough to get her from the accident to one hospital, and she flatlined again. And they needed to put her on stat flight and take her to a better hospital. But they couldn't do that if they couldn't stabilize her. And she had flatlined twice. So I'm like, let me go see her. Let me go see her. And they're like, well, you can't go see her because she's died again. She's passed again. This doctor comes in and tells us this. And I dropped to my knees on the floor. I've never felt such immense pain and love for someone in my life as I did at that moment. And I just screamed to God, please tell me what to do. And this huge booming voice that I always hear said, do what I've taught you to do and don't have an ounce of doubt. Because if you have an ounce of doubt, it won't work. Well, I knew exactly what that meant. And I said, take me to her now. And they take me in the room and I put my energy into her and the heartbeat came back and she was stabilized. They put her on the stat flight. They got her to the children's hospital that she needed to go to. She flatlined again. They finally got her stabilized again. Once we got there, they tell me, at best, she's going to live 24 hours. And I'm just smiling. I'm shaking my head and I'm saying, no, you're wrong. And they're like, ma'am, you don't understand. This child is really, there's more broken and bleeding things in her than there are good things right now, healthy things. And I'm like, but you don't understand the power of prayer and the power of God. And I'm like, you're wrong. And I refused to believe them every time they said, she survived 24 hours. And they said, now it's only going to be 48. And then it's only going to be 72 hours. And at the end of the 72 hours, they're like, well, the best you're going to hope for is that she's going to be a vegetable. And every time I'm just like, you're wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong. I know more than you do. You're wrong. And I was just very adamant that they were wrong. Well, I wasn't the only one there giving her my energy. Some of the people from my mother's church were actually laying hands on her and healing her as well. So it wasn't just me, but I'm telling you, within 3 weeks, exactly 3 weeks, and 3 is a magic number, and she flatlined 3 times too, keep that in mind. In 3 weeks, she had went from she's going to die, she's in ICU, to a regular room on the other floor, then to rehab, and then home before her birthday. Mm-hmm. And when she came home, she was completely lucid, had all of her faculties. Everything in her was great and perfect and working well. The only thing was that femur was broke, so she was in a wheelchair, of course. But everything else in her was healed. The internal bleeding had stopped. They had done like 11 exploratory surgeries on her. She had 11 specialists working on her. And the day that I checked her out of rehab, the psychiatrist brought me into his office, or psychologist, whatever they call them at rehab. He says, ma'am, I have 11 doctors. He showed me this really thick stack of paperwork that was her medical records. And he says, I have 11 doctors and none of them want to take credit for her healing. Can you explain to me what happened here? And I smiled at him and I said, belief in God. Power of prayer, belief in God. What else is there? And he said, well, I'm a medical doctor. And I said, well, maybe that's your problem. And I shook his hand, wished him a good day, and took my daughter home. 3 weeks. 3 weeks is what it took. Yeah. And she went on to graduate with straight A's, and she's a beautiful human being. What else can you ask for? Right? And that was, for me, that was the tipping point. That was when I was like all in. I was full power, full steam ahead. There's no stopping this. This is definitely God's purpose,
All right. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, Kelly. Well, I want to thank you for coming on. It's been a fantastic little bit less than an hour, I think. But yeah, if anybody wants to check Kelly's YouTube page out or channel out, I will leave the link down below. It's Earth Song.
Right now, I just have the intro video. I've just been in the middle of moving, so that's a little hectic, but I'm getting it settled down now, and I'm hoping I'm going to start out with probably 1 or 2 a week for the first week or 2, but after that, it'll be at least 1 video a day, probably more.
Okay. Awesome.
My goal is to probably have 3 or 4 a day.
Yeah, because you're releasing full-on courses on YouTube or something, aren't you? That people can watch for free.
Right. Yes, because knowledge should be free.
Yeah.
I wrote a book and I refused to publish it because it's all the information that I know, all of the knowledge that I've obtained, and I didn't want to have to sell it. and you can't put a book out for free if you got to pay a publisher. So I held on to the book, and I'm just going to take it chapter by chapter and put it on my YouTube channel.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again. And yeah, thank you very much for coming on, Kelly.
Bye.
Bye-bye.